Here we are in the Alentejo region of Portugal. This area is super underrated. We're in the beautiful city of Évora, and we can't wait to show you guys what it looks like. I'm Josh with Expats Everywhere.
And I'm Kalie. Let's go.
Let's go.
While Évora might be a lesser-known city to expats nowadays, that wasn't always the case. This enchanting location is full of history because of the Roman and Moorish influence. The best part is that the influence is still seen today through the architecture.
Now, to give you a quick backstory, the name is actually derived from Celtic. It's had a long-standing Roman presence here, and really it's when the Romans had a lot of different routes coming into Évora. And when that happened, that is when the city really rose to prominence.
Hundreds of years later, the city was conquered by the Moors. The areas outside of the actual city started to develop, which allowed the area to prosper. Then hundreds of years after that, Portugal landed a surprise attack to take the city.
So that's the history, but what about right now? The newspaper Expresso puts out a yearly survey of the most livable cities in Portugal, and I bet you'd never guess that Évora has recently ranked number 2 on that list. So this city that not many expats know about is a wonderful place to live.
Now, why is one of the hottest cities in Portugal ranked so high? And why is the Old Town a UNESCO World Heritage Site? We're going to show you.
All right guys, as you can see, we have really narrow cobblestone streets here in Évora. So it's best to take in Évora on foot. A car's not gonna be able to pass through some of these streets. Let's go check out the beautiful Évora. Even though this chief city of the region is small, it's easy to highlight the gastronomy and architecture.
Soups are extremely popular in Évora, which might seem unusual because the weather gets so hot. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely don't like eating soups when it's hot. The good news though is they have a cold soup that is commonly known in Spain, but maybe you wouldn't know that it's actually here too. The soup is gazpacho, but the biggest difference is the gazpacho Alentejo keeps the ingredients as chunks as opposed to the Spanish version, which is creamy and blended. The dogfish soup is also a popular one in this region.
We aren't going to get too much into the food because you'll have to come here to experience it yourself. But something we definitely need to touch on before we get to housing is the climate and weather here. Évora is hot and dry in the summer, but it gets moist in the winter. While average summer highs are in the mid to high 80s, it's not uncommon to get heat waves. The low in the summer months generally doesn't get below the 50s.
I really like this type of heat because it means less sweating, so if you're the same as me, then Évora could be a city for you to consider. Even though you get some droughts, you can't beat the fact that the winters don't get miserably cold. The highs in the winter will be in the mid to high 50s and the lows only drop to the low 40s, so no freezing here. That's probably why they are known for their olive oil and wine.
Yes, the olive oil and wine is absolutely abundant in this region. So around Évora, you do have your vineyards and your wine cellars that is absolutely typical of Alentejo. The wine is fantastic here and it's helped by the climate. In the summers, you have some incredible heat that comes during the summer days, and at night it does drop. During the winter, it does get cooler because we're so far inland away from the sea. Do be careful though, because vineyards might not be running their normal hours right now, so it's best to call and expect places to be closed if you pop in and out of them.
Also popular is the olive oil, which you can do tours and tastings for this as well. It's a bit like wine tasting where you can learn to swirl it, you smell it, you taste it, you can pair it with food or try it by itself.
Another lesser known tour that you can do is a cork tour. That's right, cork, as in the material. These fields are common to this region. Hey, it makes sense with all of the wine. You can find all sorts of items made out of cork too.
Since Évora is quite inland, you're far away from the coast, but there are these little hidden gems all over that are river beaches. You can enjoy the beach feel with calmer and warmer waters.
You have the option of paddleboarding, kayaking, and much more of these river beaches, so they're worth a visit.
Now heading back into the city, let's take a look at the architecture and a few notable landmarks. You 100% cannot miss the Say Cathedral. There's a mix of Gothic and Romanesque influence, and you can see the sculptures of the apostles wrapped around the main portal of the building.
Remember before we talked about the Roman influence? So there are parts of Évora that make you feel like you're in Rome. There's a Roman temple and ruins of Roman baths. There are a variety of churches, a palace, an aqueduct, gardens, and more. But last place we're going to note is the churches that you've heard of. Its official name is Igreja de São Francisco, but maybe you've heard of Capela dos Ojos, which is the Bone Chapel. What an interesting place.
Well, we've talked a bit about the weather, the food, and great things to do. Now let's talk about the cost of things. To be honest, the city is small and there aren't many places to rent. No. You can get a T2 unfurnished for around 500, 600 euros. If you want it furnished, it might be closer to 700 euros. There are definitely more opportunities for buying in Évora, but a lot depends on how new or old the place is and what amenities come along with it. A turnkey T2 can be under 200,000 euros. It's also possible to find T3 and T4 units for the same price, but you might have to do some work on them. There are definitely good deals to be had in Évora. You just have to decide if you want to live in a more rural region.
There aren't any international schools in Évora, but there is a university. You definitely want to catch those plates of the day for inexpensive food out, which you can get a normal plate that includes a drink and a meal for under 10 euros.
Living in Évora is going to give you a completely different feel than living in another place like Lisbon or even some of the smaller towns around the Algarve. It's worth checking out though, as it might surprise you and fit your lifestyle. The warmer weather, the good wine, and the small feel might be the perfect fit you never considered finding in Évora and the Alentejo region.
So let's dive into our opinion on Alentejo and especially on Évora. What do you think?
So personally, I think that Alentejo has a lot to offer for a specific lifestyle. But if we break it down to Évora, for me, Évora is just too small. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I think that there's a decent amount to do in terms of tourism, and certainly there's a decent amount that happens where Portuguese people will come into Évora and they'll take in the gastronomy, they'll take in the Chapel of Bones, they'll take in some of the architecture. But you're not going to get a lot of international tourism. You're definitely not going to get a lot of international musical acts, that type of thing. So I don't know, it's a bit small. You're kind of far from the airport. You have the Lisbon airport available, but
personally, I think it's a good place to visit, and I think if you're here living in a different part of Portugal as an expat, then you definitely want to visit this region, and definitely Évora as well, because there are some really cool things to see. But as far as living there, it's just a different lifestyle. It's not a terrible thing, it's not a bad thing, but for me personally, it wouldn't be the place that I would want to live.
So another thing that's been mentioned, whether it be on our live chats or people that we've spoken to, the roads here are very good. You have easy access to other places. Like if you do want to go to Lisbon, you do have easy access. The interesting thing is the cost of living is much lower here. The cost of housing is lower. Although I will say this, I've been speaking to some people in the real estate industry and prices are already going up. So they're already seeing that popularity being second ranked, prices are going up. People looking for the golden visa, prices are going up because Évora is actually one of the places that you can invest in for a golden visa, and that's going to raise prices.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It is becoming more popular. And again, there are some really great things, especially around the city, to check out. You know, you've got the wine, the olive oil, the cork, the river beaches. I really like those river beaches. Again, though, for me, it would be a visit, not a live. So I would not expat that. Would you expat that?
You would not expat that. I would not expat that either. Although
visit.
I would come back and visit for sure.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful here.
Definitely.
So if you guys are interested in different locations around Portugal, be sure to click this playlist right here and you guys can check out other locations that we visited and broken down for you. Now let's get moving.
Bye.
Bye.